Hey TewlTalk, welcome back. You know, most of my videos, I think, I start to sound like I'm so exhausted and so tired by the end of the video. There's like no energy left. So I want to kind of capture this one while I have some excitement. The axle is almost done. This is the best part that you guys have been waiting for. The airlines are installed. The gears are all on the locker. Everything's in the differential. So now here we go. We're going to throw it in there. We're going to check everything, make sure it's right, and then button it back up. So stay tuned. We're almost done. So what I'm looking for here is I want to try to line these heavy-duty steel bars parallel to the housing, and they go in the little recesses of holes. And this is the one that I reviewed on a TewlTalk. This is made by Creative Metal, and I'll drop a link in below for you guys to check this tool out. This is one of my, I would never install an ARB. You could do gears without these, but I would never install a locker without these, because you have to put a preload on the housing. You're literally opening the housing up like a pair of pliers, just cracking it open. And pliers are probably a bad example. Almost like you're pressing brakes open. So those of you who've done brakes, you know, you're pushing the material apart. You're opening it up, and just by a thou. So I'm gonna have to set up a couple of different tools here. So you're gonna see me kind of progressively go through this and make sure that we don't overextend the housing. If you do more than a couple thou, you can't damage it. I ought to make this a completely separate segment, just because there's so much to cover on this one. But we'll see if we can get this in there. So this tool comes with the spreader. It's called a case spreader, and a bag of bolts. And the cool thing is, you don't have to get, this stuff doesn't have to be super tight. You're just getting it all lined up right now. And it's gonna kind of move around on you. Just make sure this thing doesn't fall on your leg and injure you. So I'm just lining the holes up right here. So I had to move the suspension around a little bit to get this to line up. So I'm gonna have to work with what I got. It's going to be easier on the rear axle because I won't have all this triangulated suspension. But once I get everything lined up, we're just taking some grade 8 bolts and just assembling this. And I'm going from the rear to the front, just because I have clearance issues over here on my overly oversized track bar that I bought from Rock Crawler. So I'm just getting this lined up. I have everything there. I also purchased the upgraded kit, which comes with these L brackets, and all of this is really nicely. I covered this in another review of this tool. This is a really nicely made tool. You can install these brackets with another bolt here, and now I'm going to use the housing bolt, and this will keep it from, if I tighten that down, that'll keep it from falling off and hitting me. but these are such a tight tolerance on these large pins that I don't find that I'm having a problem with them falling off the casing. So maybe if you were flipping the housing around, you could use these brackets, but I'm probably not going to use those right now. But we'll see. We may have to use them later. Never say never. You always end up doing something you say you don't do. So. This is a very large screw and fitting that is actually designed for high pressure use. It's not just a bolt, but this is really well made. There's a little bit of grease on there, so you don't freeze it up. But put this in there. The great thing is there's a lot of holes in this tool, so you can just kind of line it up however you want. I'm just going to loosely, I may not even put a bolt on that one. This is just so it doesn't come off the case, because all my forces are going to be spreading out. These bolts really are, all they're doing is holding, the corners. You can kind of see that. These are just holding the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the bolts or the nuts on loosely. These don't have to be put on super tight. You can if you want. I'm just doing it to keep it from slipping off. Just finger tight on those, and then I'm gonna leave this one off because I can't get it access to the edge of that because of the track bar. So the tool I bought also came with, this is the really high-end one, this is the Plus edition. It actually came with a spanner wrench. So I do have large wrenches, but since this is already here, I'm just going to go ahead and start this. So it's starting to spread the housing. It's taking the slack out right now. You can see it starting to preload the corners because you can kind of see it grabbing slowly. It's probably not showing up on the video, but you can notice it with just your eye. All right, so I can't turn it anymore with my hand. So I know clockwise is where I want to go with this. So I'm just going to put a little turn on this and then back it off. I don't want to start torquing the housing until I get a micrometer, or not a micrometer, a dial indicator on there, because I only want to move this thing apart like 2/1000ths to get the diff in there. Alright, so this is a magnetic base, and there's a switch on it. I just flipped the switch and stuck it down, and I'm even with the housing. I'm going to use the housing in the center. If you use the housing over here or over here, we're trying to spread this thing, so it's going to throw my measurement off. I need to be on the middle of the housing because it's not moving. And at 0, we'll put 2,000 here. So there's 1, and bump it, so probably about 2 right there. That's all you want. That was about a half turn on this for you guys who are wanting to buy this tool. So there's your 2,000. Super easy, and this tool is $30 at Harbor Freight. Had it for 10 years or so. I've got 2,000s spread on the case now. It's spread out nice. I used the dial indicator to tell me that, and I can put my diff in here and I don't have to worry about damaging my ARB or my bearings. So it'll slide right in there now. Alright, so something I wanted to show you guys before I slide that in there. I grabbed my carrier. I've got the race. This is the race. This is the piece that came with the stock housing. This is the stock spacer. This is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to put that on the left side, like that. So just putting the race on and the spacer on the outside. I'm going to have that sitting on my lap. I'm going to take the other side. This is the other race. I'm going to slide that on to the end of the other side of the locker and also the stock shim. So everything is going back in like it came out, but now we're using an ARB. So hopefully we can get this in there. Not too much trouble. That's why you gotta have this space spreader, this spreader that I got here. If you don't, this is gonna be a very painful process. Slide everything in there. Gives me about 2 thou to work with. And there's the spacer on that side. I'll move this over. No hammering. I don't need to hammer this thing in like you see in so many videos. I got a proper tool, and that makes all the difference. So I've got the spacers in here on either side, and I've got a bearing cap, the left side, and I took them off in order so I knew which one was which. Keep track of all your bolts. I'm going to go ahead and move this copper line out a little bit. You got to be careful with the copper line. You don't want to manhandle it, but you can bend it a little bit. It's not going to hurt nothing. Just get it out of the way of the cap. Stick my cap in there. You got to do this first, because if you don't, you can't get a good gear pattern. Everything's going to be a real tight fit, so just be patient with it. Alright, so that's not going to fall out of there. It's loose. I can pull that thing right back out because I have the spreader on there. But now I can put my stuff in, and I don't have to hammer it in with one hand or mess it around. I can just slide it in, slide it back out, get my gear, take this off, get my gear pattern. You can already tell. Hear that clicking? That's your backlash. It's not set up properly because I don't have my caps on, but once everything's in there, you'll see. The other great thing about this new Dana 44, you can't get these caps wrong. When I took the other ones off, I was assuming that the Dana 44 was like the old one, and I used to do the work that way. I would mark my caps, but these have the arrows that go on the outboard side, so they go outside of the axle. If you put the cap on the other side, this cap's too small to fit on the other side, so you really can't mess this up. I mean, you guys can do this. I'm just getting a finger tight started so I don't cross thread anything. Don't try to hammer these down until you've got everything lined up. And then I'm just going to go get I'm not getting my monster sized impact wrench. I'm going to get my little impact wrench because I don't want to put a ton of torque on these yet. So I'm going to use my little tool, not the big tool. I'm on a gear tooth. I want to make sure it doesn't slip off there, so I got to try to get that as square as possible. But it's difficult with this new Dana. But that's what you're looking for, is trying to just get on a tooth, and you'll see the dial jump around. Jump around, jump up, and get down. So I don't have to really zero this out. I can go to like whatever the closest thousandths is and just look. So I've got 50 to 42. I've got 8 thousandths in there. So if I move this with my finger, we got 8 thousandths. So we're a little, that's a little too much. I think we need to add about 2 thousandths. Okay, so for completion's sake, I went ahead and took off the, we saw that we were 8 thousandths. We got a little too much. So something to talk about here we want to cover, and this is very important. This is why you got to watch the whole entire video. A lot of people jump around, kind of catching little tidbits of how to install gears, but I think this is the part we need to talk about ARBs. The ARB is 3 to 5 thousandths backlash. This is too much. 8 was good for stock carriers. ARB, they want you to have it a little tighter because of the airline and because of the parts and how the case is designed. It needs to have a little bit more it needs to have a little bit more backlash. In the stock set was 5, so we're going to shoot for 5, but it's 3 to 5. They want you to be a little bit more accurate. The documentation I have from Yukon says 6 to 8, so we're actually, if we were putting in a regular stock set of gears, this would be fine. We would already bolt it back up, start filling it, hook up our airline, and start filling it with oil. We would be done. It's just that easy. But because we have an ARB, we're going to use ARB's specifications. There's a lot of talk out there because there's so many different numbers you can use, but you need to use it for your specific application. That's probably where people are afraid to start messing with these because they're not exactly sure which specification to use. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're doing ARBs, you want to be tighter, and it's going to be 3 to 5 thousandths. In the stock carrier, when I pulled it, if you watched the previous videos I made, the stock carrier was 5 thousandths backlash. So we're going to go back to that 5. I have 8 thousandths. We're going to move the carrier a thou towards the ring gear, because if it's large, you got to think it's further away from where it's supposed to be. And since you have gears are angled, the closer you get them, there's the less what they call backlash. There's just less this movement. So right now I have this much movement. I need to be about right here. And so because you're moving the ring gear towards, back here is the pinion. I'm moving this towards the pinion. So this isn't to do with the gear pattern. When we start getting our gear pattern and get the grease on here and get that nice color, that's a little bit different. Before you even get there, you need to make sure your backlash is right, because otherwise, what's the point? You're gonna have to take it all apart and do it anyway. So I like where I'm hearing the pinion and how everything is close, because we had something to work with. We're not building a fresh axle. We have to start from scratch. We're using the previous numbers, and all I'm doing right now, so you're not confused, I'm using the previous shims that were already in there. I haven't shimmed it at all, so it's the stock setup right now. All I did was put the shims back in the way I got them. So we're at 8 thousandths. It's just that means the carrier that ARB made is like just a thou the wrong direction. So because ARB has a little bit different specifications, I'm going to use their documentation. All right, so what I had showed you under the diff is that I have to decrease the small one and increase the big one by about 2 thousandths. So if I want to go the other direction and make it tighter, I have to move the diff over closer to the pinion. I need to shrink this one. Well, because I was about 3 thou out, I don't want to go a full 3 on this, because that's going to move it over way too much. I actually need to take about a thou and a half out of this, but since I don't have a thou and a half shim, I'm going to measure this with my caliper, because this is the one we got to decrease. We can add a shim to the other one, no big deal. So I'm going to take my caliper, zero it out. So I'm at 0, measuring it. I got 77, 76, so 76 thousandths. So it's 0.076. I need to make this about 0.074. We'll make it 7.3, because I got about 0.075 after messing around with it a little bit. So I got it a little smaller. So you got to change it, move it around a little bit until you get it smaller. And your smallest number is what you use. 0.075, and I want to make it a 0.076. So I'm going to use my shim packs that I have from ARB. I've got a whole stack of them here. These come with a locker. I need to make this, I'm going to pack these together now. And I'm going to take this, it's 0.075, and I need to make this shim, the new one, 0.073. That's way too big. That's 0.9. So take a couple, these are real, some of these are really thin, they're like paper. Maybe even less than paper thin. I mean, they're so you have a lot of room to work with here. So I'll take the thicker ones. So there's 0.059, 0.06. This one again is, then we were at 0.075. 0.73 is what we're looking for. 0.73. So I've got 0.06 here. I'm going to add a little bit more shim pack to it. Got a bunch of little ones here. Super easy stuff, guys. Hey, look, there's my stock one, 0.075. 0.074. Now, 4 to 6. I'm getting a little bit of walk around on this one. So this is the equivalent of my stock. And now look what I can do. I can take it out. So if I had to get rid of the stock one, and now I have the equivalent right here. So now I just decrease whatever I need to take out of this. So I'm going to take a little tiny shim out of this one. There's like probably 7 shims here. It looks like there's only 3. But one's really thin. They're like, you just peel it off. All right, guys, that's where I'm at. There we go. Perfect. All right, so there's my 0.073 shim, and there's my 0.075 shim. So I went from this, I'm going to put this back in the diff. So I took 2 or 3 thou out of this, right? Well, what do I got to do to the other side? If you take anything out of the right side of the diff, you got to do the left. So I'm going to go back to the left side, which I know is the right size, close. I need to add 2 to 3 thou to this. Guess what I got? The wrong shim, because it's an Advantech. I can't use the same shim pack, so don't make that mistake. What I do have is ARB, including a whole other pack of these shims. So I gotta add 3 thou to this, roughly. TewlTalk, man. This is why people don't want to do differentials. If you're not willing to go back and just watch the video, take notes, it's just like college, man. If you had a test and you really cared about your grade, wouldn't you study for it? That's kind of how gear diffs are, man. You have the right tools, spend your time on the study, and then mess around with it, watch other people do it, and that's how we learn. Nothing's new anymore, right? That's why we go to college, because some professor did it before you and now he's teaching you how to do it. So look at it like that. Don't look at it like, oh, I can't do this. So I've got my new shim packs. Got an extra 5 thou in here that's going to give me preload. It's going to preload my diff and give me a little bit of extra stiffness in the case, because I want that for my ARB. And then I remember I removed 2 or 3 thou out of this. We're going to put that in there. We're going to check backlash, and I bet we're going to be spot on. We're going to be in that 4 to 5 thousandths. So let's go check it out. If I screwed it up, I'm going to leave it in the video, and you guys will see. It's not that difficult. We'll just pull it back out again, mess with the shim pack a little bit. We'll take a thou out either way, and we'll go back and add it again. So stay tuned. I got the rest of this coming. Put the tool back on here just where we took it off. So now we have it all set up and ready to go. Just going to realign the point where it touches the diff. Oh yeah, I want you guys to see this. Okay, I don't have it zeroed out for the video's sake. I mean, you guys can tell when it moves, how much it moves. All right, I'm at 0, roughly. Oh, it's so beautiful. 1, so I'm at about half. So 1, 2, 3.5. So I'm right there, nice and snug. We are now ready to check our gear pattern. I got about 3 thousandths in there, which is what is called for at the at ARB's documentation. All right, you recording? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Can you see that? Okay, right here? Mm. All right, TewlTalk fans, I just picked up a special friend today who can help me record. So I've got my daughter Maddie with me, and she's going to be my new camera lady. So I'm going to put this indent inside there. If you don't put this in there and you start the diff's going to roll this copper tube up like a piece of string. So you have to put this in there like that. Nothing fancy about it. Very simple design. I really think ARB did an amazing job on this. And we're just going to get this lined up. Alright, I'm just going to use my tools. How do we look, camera lady?
Good.
Alright, we're going to line this up and make sure that it's in the diff. We didn't mess that up. And that when the diff spins, nothing's touching it. Okay, the only caveat now I have is that we're going to have to pull this one more time. We're going to check preload on the crush collar, because if we're using crush collars, the only way I'm going to know if I got that, 20, 30 is what I started with. I want to get it back to 30 preload. Then we'll put this back in, add the 30 to whatever our new preload is, and then that's the only way you're going to know how to set up the preload before everything's installed. So I know it's one extra step. You're going to go ahead and want to pull this one more time, and then we'll set up the pinion preload, and then we'll install this finally. So it's one more step, but it's done right. All right, so this is the final time I'm going to have to do this. Our seal is on. Took the diff back out. We've got our freedom of movement here needs to be 30 inch-pounds. So the final time we put this crush collar down, and I've got my setting. The thing is, you have to have a torque wrench with the lowest setting available. Otherwise, you're going to crush the crush collar, and you're going to have a sloppy diff. It's going to move around on you. So I put a lot of red Loctite in there. I don't want it to move around. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on the lowest setting. And we're active again. We've got the nut on there. Still moves pretty easily. Got the inch-pound wrench right here. Let's see what we got. It's right at like 40. So it's a little snug, but the diff calls for 30 to 40. So we're gonna run it. All right, we're gonna hook up our axle shaft. We gotta go put the diff back in, and then we have to torque the bolts in the diff. I got a trick for you, because torquing the bolts while the diff's out is kind of difficult. So this will be a step you don't want to miss, because this is very key, or your diff will come apart while it's in the truck. Just re-installed the 4 bolts onto the flange. The axle shaft is nice, it spins nice and freely. It's all bolted up. Now we can move back on the front. Okay, got the truck in 4-wheel drive. Drive shaft is connected. Just 4 bolts can go in the truck. Throw it into 4 high. Now everything's connected, and I shouldn't be able to turn this. I shouldn't be able to turn this axle. So it's locked in. Can't move it. So now, TewlTalk tip. If you can't get these bolts tight because it's out of the car, out of the vehicle, and you got to get these to 135 foot-pounds, leave it in the vehicle, and then put your torque wrench right here, and then go around and boom, 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 boom. That's it. So let's do it. All right, we're doing 135 foot-pounds with a 15 millimeter socket. Is the best fit, and then we're going to crush down each one of these. All right, guys, and then these get 135 foot-pounds, the ring gear bolts, and then these get 80 foot-pounds. All right, this copper bends really easily, and I just bend it. You want to make larger, more strategic bends first, and then move slowly into the more tactical and tighter bends. Strategic being bigger picture, and then tactical being little tiny turns. So this one I just kind of rolled with my fingers, not one big kink, but it was just roll, roll, roll until you get this moved around, and then once you get the line kind of where you want it, we got to tuck it up in this hole that I drilled earlier in the video for drilling your hole into your diff from another video I have on YouTube. We've got to get it back here, and I have plenty of light to see where I need to go. So I need to take more of a strategy of getting it lined up first before I tuck it back in there, because I see where I have to go, and it may just help me to assist. There's room behind here for plenty of space to put your finger back here. It doesn't look like it because the cap's so close, but since I already have these torqued, I don't. What you could do is remove the cap and then install it, but I like having the cap in place so that I can see where the line's going. So I have to make my bend about right here so I can start making my strategic bends first, get it kind of where I want it to go. And that's going to get me there and take me through the housing to the back. All right, at this point, I'm just going to I'm going to push the line in from the diff side in the front, push it open. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of room in there so that I can mark it, come back, I'll cut it again so I know where my fitting is. And this is just a little bit of cat and mouse. If you made your threads real clean, you can see the pipe thread just screws right in there. And then I'll put some Teflon tape on there. So we're going to use the pipe cutter one more time while we have it over here, and just apply that to this side. And I may go ahead and just pull this out and do it from over here so I have a little more room. All right, so I've trimmed down my copper line here, again with this great little pipe cutter. Let's work some large water pipe as well, so it's don't let the size fool you. It actually is really sharp. So we cut down a couple of pieces of copper with it, and now we have our fittings. I put if you don't put Teflon tape or some kind of thread sealant on here, your disc's going to spit fluid back up out of here, and it's going to cause you to have it's not going to vent out of the proper line right here. It's going to want to spit out of here. But this line and these lines are so close together, I would hope that it would take the path of least resistance, which is your actual vent line that goes up into under your hood. So I've got the copper tube right here, and I can push it through. That way I can work on it a little bit, but then it allows me also to push it back out. So you want to have a little bit of freedom of movement so that when you set it up, it gives you a place to work. So the next part is, according to ARB, so this is what I'm working with right now. Here's the bulkhead fitting, the tube, the center compression nut, the O-ring, spacer in the middle of that compression nut, and then this fitting. So our bulkhead's in, and thank God for pictures. Not so great with the words, but I like the pictures. So we have the bulkhead and the copper tube sitting here that I can reach. The next one will be the tiny O-ring, if you can see that. It goes on first, and it goes against the back of the bulkhead. Slide that on there. All right, that sits against the back of the bulkhead body. And then the next one is a spacer. That would be this little copper spacer. That goes on next. And then another O-ring. Now we've double sealed, double O-ringed this tube. So there's a O-ring, spacer O-ring, and that slides right back in there. You can see it just pushes in. It's a tight fit, but that's what we want. The O-ring, and then the next thing will be the compression nut. And this is the compression nut. So as this screw turns down, what it's doing is pushing the copper line back into the housing. And as it tightens, snugs everything down, it squeezes that tube. So now I got an airtight seal inside here. So the sandwich that we made pushes down and then squirts out those little rubber O-rings against the copper tube. So now we have a fitting that's airtight on the inside as well as the outside. On the end going into the bulkhead, because we're trying to keep the oil and the diff housing separate from the airline. You don't want air going into your housing. So I'm going to go ahead and put this taped piece on. I'm going to go ahead and snug all this down and get an open-ended wrench on it. So I want this all to be nice and tight. Tons of foot-pounds of torque on it, just to get it till it's snug on the outside. Put that in there. As that crushes it down. I can understand why some people think that air lockers are difficult. They can be troublesome. But if you just take your time, you go check all your work. You know, I know it's hooking up two wires is probably easier. I'm way better at an electrician than I am I think a mechanic. Electronics makes sense to me. So I'm a big fan of e-lockers, but the engagement here is so good with the ARB. It supersedes what you get with a e-locker, because the air pushes this actuator in and it synchronizes and then locks. So your diff's always in the right position to be locked, whereas an e-locker is just turning on electricity. The coil inside reacts as a magnet and tries to pull the engagement, where the engagement on this is synchronized and almost is like a transmission with a synchro. So I'm going to stop there on this one. That is how you connect an ARB locker to your diff. And I'm going to run my line up under my hood, and I'm going to use the profile of what you can see here. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'm going to use the profile from the airline, or this is the vent, the axle vent. I'm just going to follow that up out of the housing and then up into my engine bay. Alright, got one side in. You can see inside the differential, it's not moving, it's spinning freely. I'm unlocked. So that's what unlock does. Both sides of the axle are spinning freely. Now let me go lock it. Dealing with a wiring problem right now, but I think I got it kind of figured out. This is interesting. Okay, you heard the pump kick on, and I heard a click. So I've got air coming out of that airline all the way down here. Airline's hooked up. I don't have any air coming out of the compressor or the compression fitting. Here's the axle. I can't move it. It's locked because I have it in two-wheel drive right now. So there's no freedom of movement. As soon as I click this button, shut the axle off, you'll hear a click. So the axle's got 100% locker now. And there was a hiss, so it let the solenoid open up. And I'm freedom of movement. So the line comes up out of the wheel well from where the locker is located, up to the back of the firewall, into these clips that were already existing for the hose that goes into your water, to squirt water on your windshield. And then I just clipped those in there, ran it under this area, up this direction, again under this cowling and this plastic area in the front of the Jeep, back around here under the air box, behind the electrical box, and then up in this area. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to give myself enough nylon line in case I wanted to move the pump, or later on it would give me some options to then move the line somewhere else. So all I did, the fitting literally is a push-in fitting. I cut it with that pipe cutter, the same one I used for the copper, and then I pushed that into the black fitting here, and then just bolted that to my compressor. So that's all there is to hooking up the ARB. All right, so that wraps up the axle install for the ARB. You can see the housing's all back together. You can't even tell that there's an ARB air locker in there. It's all stealth. I didn't put any covers on there yet because after the gear break-in, I haven't decided whether I'm going to put additional protection under there or not. And there's a couple different products that I've run across that I kind of want to look into. So I haven't made my mind up on that. But the diff's all done. I spray painted the bolts and used the stock axle seal for the diff, and it's all cleaned up and ready to go. And hopefully you guys found this informative. I know it was a lot of videos to put this together, and there's a lot to get together just to get it finished. And so I'm hoping you found something in there you guys can use. If you would like it, if you like the video, click like and subscribe, and the next video that comes out you'll get a notification for. So guys, thank you so much. Take care.